Okay, so we're back with lesson 6, part 2. So we've got our recycler view displaying our restaurants. We could probably increase the text size here. I'm going to not worry about that for right now. And a few people had issues where there was a huge amount of space between each item in the recycler view. And the reason for that is in our item restaurant template, our linear layout, we need to change the layout height from match parent, which fills the whole, basically fills the whole container, the whole recycler view height. We got to change that to wrap content. That way, each item in our recycler view template is only tall enough to display the content inside of it. If we wanted to space it out, we could add a bit of padding to it, for example. But I think it's good enough for our purposes. So what I want to do now is add a couple of floating action buttons. Oops. So that we can navigate back and forth between our list and our main activity. So I've put the floating action button code up on Blackboard for you. It's in the lesson 6 folder. So I'm going to add this manually to mine to show you how it's done and show you how to pick the material icons. But you can grab this code if you like from Blackboard. So I'm going to add mine. First, I'm going to go to my list activity. So I want to add a floating action button. Let's wrap content for both. I'll give it an ID of, what did I call it? Add fab. I'll put it in the bottom right corner. So I'll align the bottom to the bottom of the parent and the end to the end of the parent. Now I'll show you how we can pick an icon and set up the background and foreground color as well. So I'll close the tag. So for the image, I'm going to pick this Android, I'll just double check, it's Android SRC compat. Okay, actually, we'll come back to the image in just a sec. We're going to have to add a library so that I can get the material icons. But if I want to set the background, I'll set the background, just make sure it's back. I get confused between background and background tint. Yeah, so it's, so I'll set it to one of the colors in our theme. So right now we're using, I'll use color accent. Not sure if it'll recognize this. Right, so if I add here, oh, Andrew, you mean for the source compat? Okay, I think what I need to do, yeah, I'm going to add it in my styles. I'll leave it here for a minute. What I should have done is add the resource, add the link in my styles. So I'm going to go, actually, should have done this first. I'll go to my project. I'll go to resource and values. I'm going to open up. I'm not even sure where my, Okay, we've already got material components here. So our color secondary is here. So I want to use this teal color for my button. So I'll use this @color teal 200. That gives me a little color swatch. And then I want to set the tint as white. Now I still don't have an icon here. So I'm going to go into the design view for a minute. So we have a button, it's the right color. So in my source property, I'll click. You can try it this way. I'm going to search here for list. If I click add a resource, let's see, I'm going to import drawables. Whoops. Try it this way. I'm going to add a vector asset here. So this brings up clip art that comes with Android. So by default, it gives me this. If I click here, I'm going to search for a list, and I'm going to pick one of these icons. I'm going to change my color to white. So again, if I click clip art, I can browse. It's going to add this to the drawable folder. So now let's see what that gives us. Oh, I still need to set the source. So now I can pick my drawable icon that comes from material design. So now if I go back to my design view, I get a little list icon here. Yeah, I made a bit of a mess of that. So I want to add some code on the click of my floating action button that will open up our main activity. So you can grab the code from Blackboard. So I'm going to go back to my list activity. In my onCreate, I'll create an intent. I set the source property. Android source. So our application context and our main activity .java Then we'll call start activity and pass in our intent. We'll need to import the intent library. And now if I start the app again, it should load my list activity with our floating action button. And if I click the floating action button, it should take me to the main activity. I'll put this up here. Sure. So to get the icon again, first we need to add the icon to the project, and then we can choose it. So let's say I want to add a different icon to the project. I'll go into Design View, click on my first, actually what did I do? I clicked on my button, I clicked Source, so over here in the source, I clicked this little window, and then on the Pick a Resource screen, I clicked the plus sign. And I picked Vector Asset. And that brings up under Asset Studio a little dialog that says configure Vector Asset. Under Clip Art, it defaults to the Android logo. If you click on it, it then loads all the material icons. So I searched here for the word list, and then I picked one and added it to the project. Once I added it to the project, it then appears under the drawable folder as an XML file. And then in my source, I could just set it to drawable and the name of my new icon, my new SVG icon. I'll do it again for our other button that'll go on our main activity. So I'll go through the process again. It'll be a little less clunky this time. My apologies. So I'm going to run my code. I think, Edwin, when I created the icon, I picked this one, the 24. You could pick a bigger version of it. Yeah, you can click the properties as well in the design view. So now I've got, whoops, I put the wrong icon on here. I want to change this anyway. My activity list should have the add icon. So why is my button not working? Oh, because this has to be in an on-click handler. Not very smart. Add fab dot. I've got to put it in an on-click listener. I think I need more sleep. Sorry about that. So I'm going to put this in an on-click listener, and then I need to change the icon. The list page shouldn't have a list icon. The list activity should have an add icon that will load the add activity. I'll use the list icon on my main activity floating action button. So I'm going to change the icon. I'm going to go through the process again. So when I click the button, well, I've added this floating action button here. Oh, Tim, you're talking about, okay, I'll go through it again because I've got to change the icon anyway. So it's working. I've put an on-click listener, but I've got the wrong icon here. So I'll go back to my designer, choose my button. I'm going to click on, besides source, I'll click the little rectangle, there's a plus button right up here. Tim, this might be what you're looking for. Right under pick a resource, there's a plus button. Okay, Mark will look at that. So I'm going to pick vector asset. So under, you see my dialog says pick a resource. The very first button at the top left is a plus button. There's refresh. There's a plus button right here. Okay, well, you need to get it up. So beside source, you've got to click this little square beside your source. It's not a very good icon. It's poor in Android Studio. Now under pick a resource, yep, you click plus vector asset. So I'm going to change this. So Edwin, the default size is 24 by 24. You can change that. So here, I'm going to search for, oh, right here, actually, I'll just use this icon. It says library add. This icon right in the middle. I'm going to pick this one. You can pick any icon you like. I'm going to change the size. Maybe I'll try 36 by 36. And I'll make sure I've picked white. So it's going to add it as baseline library add. And now I'll go back and change the source from my list to my add icon. So that changes it. It also should be a little bigger because I've set it at 36 by 36. Got it. Yeah, that's okay. So I appreciate knowing if you miss something, then let me know. So I'll run the app again. And now I should have the add button on our list activity. And the icon's a little bigger. So I want to add a floating action button here as well. And when we click it, we're just going to call finish, which will close this activity and restore us to our list. So I'll go through the process again. I'll try to do a little bit better job this time. So I'm going to open up the main activity. And again, I'm going to add a floating action button here. So our width and height will wrap the content. Our ID, what did I call it here? I called it list fab because it'll take us back to the list page. I'm going to anchor this one to the bottom right as well. So bottom to bottom of parent. And this code is on Blackboard, but I'll just go through it. I'm going to set the background tint again to our teal color. Yeah, we could do that as well. That would be fine, Hayden, if you want to do it that way. Certainly you could. I'll set the tint to white. And then to set the source image, it's probably easier if I do this through the designer. So we've got our list so far, but there's no icon on it. So I'm going to go back to my designer. I'll click onto my button. And I'll scroll down to find the source property. Oops. So I'll click the little rectangle beside. I'm going to add a bigger version. Well, I could choose my baseline, but I think I'll add the bigger version. Edwin was right that we said it's too small. So again, I'll search for list icons. I'll pick my list. But this time I want it to be 36 by 36. And it should be white. It shows as black. I maybe need to change that again. Let's see what happens, what it looks like. So I'll run it again. So I need to add the code and I need to change this so that it's white. So I'm going to set it as 36. Not quite sure why it's giving me black. Our tint is white. It may be that the resource was added as black. I'll try it one more time. We set the tint as white. I've added the icon as white. I may have to delete the resource or maybe just try another icon. It's still just defaulting to the old one. Okay, now that's annoying me. I'm going to pick a different icon, perhaps. Maybe I'll pick the library list, this library books. I'll try that one. I'm going to set it to 36. And I will make sure I choose white. I'll change it here to IC baseline library books. If it's still in black, I'm going to have to give up on it for now. Thanks, Hayden. Yeah, if you can certainly make that button, your floating action button, the save button, that will save and navigate back. Nothing wrong with that. Occasionally the emulator doesn't run. It says it loads, but you've got to press it again. It's just buggy. Okay, I'm going to have to give up for now on my color. Oh, I can try app tint. I think maybe that's the problem. Instead of Android tint, I'll use the app tint property instead. That should fix my icon color. And then we need to add the on-click listener for our list floating action button that will end the main activity. So that's just a couple lines of code. The on-click listener that calls finish. That closes the main activity and will take us back to the list. Okay, so now it's appearing, right? I was using Android tint instead of app tint. And the Android tint, that gets ignored. So let's go to the main activity code and add this little click handler in our onCreate. We'll call our list fab. And this just calls finish. So I've just added that small handler. And now when we click the button, the main activity should close, the list activity should come back into view. So now I should be able to navigate from one activity to the other. Okay. Now I may need to modify a little bit my plan for today because I'd hoped to be here a little bit earlier, and I think the tasks I've set out for you is probably going to take longer than what we have time for. But we'll get started. We'll see how far we get. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to give you, so what we want to have happen now, and I've created a couple of new resource files. So I'll just show you those. I showed them at the beginning of class, but I will show them again. So I've created this two XML resource files. The first one is called restaurant activity. And the second one is an item comment template that's used for populating this recycler view. So there's two XML files. So first thing I want you to do is go ahead in your project, and I want you to create a new empty activity called restaurant activity. So go ahead and do that now. So I'll go ahead and create it in mine. So I'm going to click on File, New, Activity, Empty Activity. I'll call it Restaurant Activity. So it'll build the Kotlin file and it'll build the XML layout. If you go into the code view of your XML, I've given you the layout that you need here. So on Blackboard, you can open up activityrestaurant.xml. And you can copy the UI here. So copy all of that XML from Blackboard, starting with the text view and ending with your ending recycler view. and go to your new activity restaurant.xml and paste all of these nodes inside your constraint layout. And you can change the background. I'll have to update that to the color teal. Or whatever we used on the other buttons. What did we call them? Color teal 200. Lots of extra spacing we don't need. Whoops, and there's a typo here. Sorry. Yep. It should be restaurant text view name. I'll update this on Blackboard. May as well fix it up. So there's your XML, and then there's one other file you need here on Blackboard. I want you to create not a new activity, but create a new layout resource file called item_XML, and the XML is on Blackboard for you as well here. So you're not creating an activity, you're creating a layout template for this recycler view. So I've updated it on Blackboard. So here's your item_restaurant. I'm sorry, we already have that name. That should be item_comment. My apologies. So we're going to make a new, I can even go here and right click my layout, new layout resources file called item comment. And we want to change the root element. It's going to be a linear layout because this is our template for our recycler view. So we're not using constraint layout. So call it item_comment with linear layout. And click OK. And this is, I've given you the entire XML here. So just paste that in to your file. Okay, so that's the UI that you need. So this is inside of the recycler view. We're going to display a username and the body of their comment. And inside activity restaurant, it shows the name of the restaurant in bold at the top. And then it has two edit texts, one for username and one for a comment body, save button, recycler view to display the list of comments. And I guess this floating action button, it should appear outside the recycler view. I've nested it inside. Sorry, it should go after the recycler view. I'll update it on Blackboard again. You'll notice also in item comment, the layout height wraps the content. It doesn't match the parent. So the items in the recycler view won't be any taller than the text inside. So here's what we're going to do with the time we have left. And we'll see how far we get. If we don't quite finish today, that's fine, as long as you're working on it. So I'm going to put you in breakout rooms in a minute, and I'm going to stop the recording. So here's what I want you to do. Now that you've got the restaurant activity, we're going to add, well, first we're going to add a quick handler that when we click on a restaurant in the list, it's going to open up, first of all, it's going to open up the restaurant activity and use an extra to display the restaurant name. You should be able to do that. I'll show you where to do it in a minute. Then you write the code to save a comment, and then you'll write the code at the end that will populate the comments for the selected restaurant. So I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. I will help you write the handler, but then you can create the intents that you need. So let's go to our list activity and we'll add a handler here. And then I'll stop the recording and you guys can work on this in your groups. And I'm happy to help. You can ask questions. So in our list activity, restaurant selection when recycler view item touched. Whoops, sorry, this isn't going to go here. This is going to go down in our on-bind view holder. So we're going to populate the restaurant, but also set up this handler. So we're going to set an on-click listener here. So we're going to create a new intent. To load our restaurant activity. We're going to add two extras because we want to pass both the restaurant ID and the restaurant name to the new activity. So we're going to set up a key called restaurant ID. Sorry, our ID. We're also going to pass in the restaurant name. And then we'll start the activity. So we should be able to click on any item in our recycler view, and it's going to load our restaurant activity and pass in the ID and the name. And this goes in the on-bind view holder because this handler has to get added for every item in the recycler view, one at a time. When we're populating the name and the rating bar, we're adding this click handler as well to this item. So if I click, it takes me to the next page. So this is on the bind view holder method. We're going to add this event handler. Links here in the chat. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to assign you into breakout groups. Oh, yes, so we'll need a comment class. It'll be a new collection. I'll make the class and I'll post the code to Blackboard. So, and our comment is going to have a restaurant ID value attached. So I will give you the class. You don't have to design it. Actually, I'll just put it in the, so I'll put it in Blackboard and I'll put it on the Paste the Code site for you. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording. I'll check in with each group. We may not get to finish today, but let's work on it and you'll get a participation mark for working on this, and we can always complete it and go over the solution next week. If you're working asynchronously, you're going to have to push what you were able to accomplish to GitHub before next week's class in order to get your mark for this week. So I'm going to stop the recording.